installed than the MySQL one is. MySQL is a different product, but it's still a relational database product. It's currently owned by Oracle. It used to be, it still is pretty much open source because they had to keep the open source license when they purchased. Anybody remember what it was that they bought? What?
Sun.
What? Sun. You're right, Sun. So they bought Sun, and Sun owned Oracle. There is still a new version of MySQL that's totally open source, which is MariaDB. And we could do that, except that I was having trouble with it, so I thought I'd stick with the MySQL.
Oracle runs a lot of good open source.
Yeah, they also got Java in there, although Java was never open source.
VirtualBox too, I think.
They do have VirtualBox, which is actually works. If you VMware, you can get through the school. They give you a year-long license, and then you can relicense it if you're still in school. VirtualBox is free and works pretty well, actually. It doesn't have as many features, but yeah, it depends on what you're doing, I guess. All right, so the video is going. I'm going here. So I'm going to go to, what I'm going to do is just search for, my machine just updated, so I'm getting all these edge things. All right. Yes, do this on the virtual machine. In this lab, it won't install on the underlying machine. You don't have the permissions. So I am going to do, what I'm going to do is just say MySQL Community Edition, Community Server rather. I'm kind of letting the download. And let me make this bigger. All right. So you want to just go to I just searched for MySQL Community Server download. We got it right here. MySQL download MySQL Community Server. For Windows, we want really to get the installer. So you can go to download page or just click the picture here. And I could go through if you need. And then it doesn't too much matter which one of these you click. One of them is a web installer. The first one is a web installer. That means that it downloads as it installs. The second one downloads the whole program before you do the install. Which one do I want to do? I'm going to do the second one. I'm going to download the whole thing. And you still have to, down here it says, do you want to log in or sign up? You don't have to. Just say no thanks. Just start my download. And it's fairly quick, yeah.
That's the Windows x86 64-bit.
Yeah. Actually, go back. We want the installer. Yeah. Go to the download page, and then do the second one. And you don't have to log in. You can just skip it. So I'm going to save it because I did the second one. It'll take it a minute, and then I'll run it from the download file. And I'll walk you through the steps of that, and then I'll come around and help you do it. But then this is all we're going to do today that's new. The rest is going to be open lab to finish up the other stuff. So mine says 3 minutes left. If you run the installer, it would start right away, but you have to download as you go, which may be better, I don't know. Two minutes left. So we're not, as I said, we're not going to do anything with this today. You can play with it if you want, but we will start on it on Monday. moving pretty fast. It's just how many of you have used MySQL? Anybody? Probably used it on a server though, right? With the,
Yeah, we did it with Debian and also with
yeah, I mean, typically, like if you have a provider, MySQL is almost always there. Also, if you have Linux, MySQL is pre-installed almost always with every version of Linux. Workbench is not, which we're going to use. Typically on Linux, they give you the MySQL and the command line interface. They don't give you the graphical interface. I have 30 seconds remaining. The basic design of a database is the same whether you're using MySQL or SQL Server, right? The relational structure is always the same. We're going to do a different database, but again, I'll talk about that more on Monday. I have 2.1 that's ready. So I'm going to let it do its security. Okay, so I'm going to run it now. And you have to say yes. You have to let it continue or it won't. And I will zoom on this. I'm going to give it. There it goes. Yes. So I'm going to zoom on this so you can see it a little better. So all right, so this is the installer. First thing you've got to do is say yes. This is MySQL installer. I'm going to say I accept. If you don't accept, it's all over at that point. You want to read the license, you can. But you really don't have a choice about saying yes if you want it. I'm going to do the developer default. I'm going to say next, and it's going to tell me when I get to the next step that there are several things that we don't have the dependencies for, and I'm going to ignore them because I don't really care about those. So it doesn't have the tools for Office. It doesn't have the tools for Excel. It doesn't have the tools to connect to Visual Studio, and it doesn't have the tools to connect to Python. We're not going to do any of those things, so it doesn't matter. Right, so I'm just going to do next. So if you want to get any of those things, that means you have to install those dependencies, right? So I'm just going to do next because we don't need any of those things. I'm going to say yes. So it gives you a list of the things it's going to install. Main things like the Workbench. We'll get the SQL, the MySQL shell, which is a prompt, command line prompt. And we'll get the actual data engines and stuff. So I'm going to say execute. And it will go through and do these, and it'll take a minute. There are a few steps after this where you have to provide a root password and things. And as I said, it may take a few minutes, yeah. You want to say yes to that. Oh, you have to do it in the virtual machine. Yeah, you need to be in the virtual machine. Although if you downloaded it, you might be able to copy that into the virtual machine.
just log out. How do I get into the virtual?
So like you have another good one? You were working on it. Yeah. Do the VMware. Yeah. And run the SQL. We did the SQL first. Whatever you just password. Yeah, all right, you may or may not be in the same place as me here. Or you just say yes. Or, yeah, so do the top one. So you want the developer, basically the developer tools. On the next one, just say okay. Right, I'm doing a video of this, so it'll be there too. I'm going to do next. So these are basically, everything's installed. What we need to do is configure them now.
SSW0.
So we want a standalone server, right? A standalone. We do not want to create a cluster. That's way more complicated than we want. We just want a standalone MySQL server. So that's the top option. What? Question or you just?
Yeah, sorry. Was it choosing a setup type? Is it
The developer one, the top one. So I'm going to do next on this. So the config type is a development machine. Basically, there's nothing. We're just going to leave everything as is here and just say next. For type and networking, you just say next. Now, you need to give it a root password. I would just say password. In real life, no. But if you forget your password here, you're screwed. So don't forget, if you do something else, I'm just going to do p at ssw0rd. Do I want to do that? I'm just doing the p at ssw0rd1. I think you could get by with just password though. P at ssw0rd1. You could add a user if you want, but let's don't right now. We'll just run from root. Another bad idea in real life, running from root. Root is like admin. So I just gave it a password. I did the same password that we've been using all along, because if you forget your root password, as I said, you're screwed. So I'm going to do next. All right, so the name of our SQL is just going to be MySQL. Mine says 57. Yours might say something different. It is going to be a standard system account. So I'm just going to do next on this page. Yeah. And then on this page, again, we don't need the X protocol, so just ignore it and do next. And then, as I said, I'll come around and help. So I am going to execute these things, and then we'll be done pretty much. As I said, it's a pretty easy install comparatively. All right, and then I'm going to finish. And so there's some more configuration, it looks like. I'm not sure. Generally, I would just leave all of this the same. You certainly do not need to configure for a cluster. These are I would just leave the ports and everything the same. So for the most part, I would just do finish here. And then next. And then I would check. If it checks successfully, do next, execute, and finish. Now what is it going to do? Okay, so it's going to start the workbench. This is actually the MySQL okay, so here's the workbench. Right now, if you want to play with it, you can, but I wouldn't do anything with it right now. It's for Monday. All right, the rest of the time is open lab for finishing what we were working on before. This is what we're going to be working with. This is the front end. It's kind of like the management studio but for MySQL. MySQL actually has several different front ends you can use. This is one. There's also, some of you might have done PHP admin. That works really well on a web server, but not so well here. There are other things. So this you could play with if you want, but I'm going to close it. I'm going to close this. And I am essentially done with the demo part. And what I'll do is I'll circulate it, help you with the installs, help you with the finishing up the SQL Server. I'm also going to stop the video because it covered the part that matters now. That's not what I wanted to do.